survive to get back home to his family, and he was doing this all for his family who was already moving on thinking he was dead. And just that was really powerful to me because I have friends here who will be going into the military.
Yeah. So even though that wasn't a true story, it could, a lot of the fictional stories we see could be true, right? They could be based on something we know. All your generation is fighting this war, and even older than you fighting this war and the wars that we're in. So it's like you were able to almost experience some of the stuff that your peers are experiencing, and friends and family members. Yeah. Anyone else want to talk about a movie?
I remember watching Saving Private Ryan.
Saving Private Ryan.
And I also very, I admire all of our troops that are, and that movie in itself was very, it was touching, and it really inspired me to do something greater than just,
Wow. What's your name?
Tanya.
Tanya said Saving Private Ryan inspired her. She admires our troops, but it also inspired her to do something greater with her life, do something bigger, something outside of herself. That's awesome. I had an experience, I won't get into it, but, and again, it wasn't my favorite movie, still isn't, but I was so touched by it. It was got not really great ratings, kind of blipped through the theaters, but it's called The Life Before Her Eyes. And wow, that movie stayed with me for 3-4 months, in a good way. And usually, sometimes it's movies that have to do with very serious topics too, isn't it? That can really touch us. So that was my movie. And sometimes you can feel God speaking to you through a movie, isn't it true? And suddenly you find yourself praying. You're again, it's quiet. You're in a contemplative mode, and you're opening to all these sights and sounds and impressions, and great time to talk to God.
What is that movie about?
It's about a school shooting, but it's not gory, and that's not really what the movie is about. It's about a friendship between two girls. And I really like the director. It's the same director as House of Sand and Fog. If anybody saw that one, and he has his incredible way. It was actually through the visuals that touched me. It wasn't even so much the dialogue and the story. It was the visuals that blew me away. He puts a lot of nature into his films. Not as some background or landscape, but nature as really a part of our lives. And nature as something we're supposed to learn from. Anybody know what an anukshuk is? The sister from Canada does. An anukshuk is a pile of rocks that looks like a person. And the Inuit, way in the northern lands of Canada, used it for everything. They use it to mark the way, they use it to celebrate something, they use it as a memorial for the dead. They come in all different sizes, and it means in the image of a man. And I often think, with this sacred film idea, we ourselves are God's handiwork. We know that. We are in the image of God. And the art that we create is kind of in our own image. So we create things that reflect our lives and our experiences and our experiences together. So I always thought the inukshuk was a great image of that. And sometimes, there might be a lot of swearing or something in a movie. And I'm not saying we should go see the bottom of the barrel movies, but sometimes we need to overlook some of that. If the movie's really coming from a good place, and if it's really saying something, and it's a worthwhile movie. For example, Gran Torino. Anybody see Gran Torino? A lot of profanity, right? Well, if it didn't, it wouldn't be true to the character of Walt, the Clint Eastwood character, right? He's this grizzled little Korean War veteran, and he's real prejudiced and everything, right? So sometimes we need to look past the swearing, instead of maybe counting swear words, say what's really going on here? What is this person really hoping for, and what are the desires of this person's heart really? And in the end, we know he was a good guy, because again, we all are the image of God. I watched this movie too about that. I think she's the female serial killer with the most people killed, and it's not like we all have to go out and watch Monster, but maybe we want to understand what would drive a person to that. Could I forgive somebody like that in my heart? And sometimes we can step through things vicariously, like a Father Anthony DeMello said, the shortest distance between the truth and a human being is a story. And I think that's why Jesus used stories, too. You know, he was always telling little parables and stories, because we can understand it, it's graspable. And there's so many layers, so many different meanings we can get out of one story. Mother Dolores Hart. Does anybody know who Mother Dolores Hart is? She was a big Hollywood star, even though you probably haven't heard of her. But she was huge. She was nominated for a Tony on Broadway, and she was in some really big films. And she's actually still a member. She's a Benedictine abbess. She is a member of the Academy of Movie Arts and Sciences, and she votes on the Oscars every year, still from her Benedictine convent in Connecticut, okay? And I should have her picture up, but she said something really beautiful. They did a big spread on her in Entertainment Weekly right before the Oscars. They just thought it was so cool. There's this nun who votes, and it's very prestigious. Not everybody gets invited to be part of the Academy. And she kept up her membership, and she watches all the movies, all the screeners, before the Oscars and votes. And she's such a beautiful human being. And she said, and she wasn't condemnatory, you know, to Hollywood, because Hollywood came to her and took her picture and did this big thing and let her speak in Entertainment Weekly. And then the following issue of Entertainment Weekly, this is just recently, they said they never got so many letters. People were like so happy to see her and, you know, just be encouraged by her. She said, movies reflect the time. It's not so much that movies are ugly, it's the ugliness of the time that is reflected. Do you think that's true? Might be true. Yeah, I kind of think that too. Sometimes, I have to watch a lot of movies because I'm the movie reviewer for the Chicago Catholic paper, and sometimes they're depressing. You know, it's just really depressing. It doesn't get me like righteous anger. You know, it's more like, oh, that is so sad. Like if people are thinking this is the way to live your life, even, or you know, wanting to imitate what they see. You know, we need more beautiful things. Yes, ugliness is a part of life, but again, we can present ugliness and then show how it can be beautiful, like how we can get out of that ugly situation. So again, sometimes there's cries even within the ugliness. I saw Easy A. Did anybody see that? It was PG-13, should have been R, right? Should have been R, thank you. Woo! And then there's a movie like Conviction that's R, should have been PG-13. You know, so a lot of kids missed out that beautiful movie about that woman who became a lawyer for her brother because he was innocent to get him out of prison. But again, if you use the F word like 4 or 5 times in a movie, they have to rate it R. It's just the way it goes. So anyway, you know, Easy A, I was so depressed after watching that movie. How many people know Theology of the Body? How many people are part of the Revolution? Whoop! Yeah. So again, when you see these movies, it doesn't make you angry. It just makes you sad. You just get sad, you know, when you see these things. But if you noticed in the movie, the girl says, and she's 24 years old, Emma Stone, she's playing a 16-year-old. She looks like she's 24. I was like, why can't they get teens? Well, I'm glad they don't have teens playing these cards. It's like, I'm not buying this. I'm sorry, you're 24 years old. She looked in high school. But she said, I wish my life was like a John Hughes movie. Did you catch that, those who saw it? Did anyone see any John Hughes movies? 16 Candles, The Breakfast Club, like these really sweet movies made by a Catholic filmmaker. I mean, that guy had Catholic sensibilities in his movies. Really sweet movies of teenagers growing up in the 80s and coming of age. And it wasn't all Pollyanna either, but a lot of your generation and younger, they're looking back to these movies going, that's more like my life. It's more like the little stuff I'm struggling with, not these big, horrific, horrible, sordid things, you know, I don't know. So anyway. So what if we took Matthew 13, where Jesus talks about, his disciples were questioning him why he spoke in parables. What if we put the word movies in every time it said parables? Why do you speak to the people in movies? So, yeah, and we need good Catholic and Christian filmmakers. You know, people who, not going to preach, but they're going to reflect, you know, a Catholic ethos, a Catholic worldview of human beings. And I think it's coming, and I think your generation's going to do it too, because a lot of you are really good with technology and media, and I'm seeing some young promising Catholic filmmakers among your own rising up. Thank God. So, and there's different ways to tell the truth. It's not always just stating a bunch of facts. And that can be really boring, you know? And you can't wrap your heart around a boring scientific fact, right? So there's a movie called Big Fish. It's one of those Tim Burton crazy, wild movies. And it says everything is true, and some of it actually happened. So we can tell the truth through fiction, you know. And then Father Kaiser made the film Romero. If anyone saw that excellent film about Archbishop Romero, El Salvador. He also did Dorothy Day, Entertaining Angels. And he did a lot of television too, back in the 70s. And he was talking about this particular film called The Insider, and he said the word God was not there, but the reality was. When someone lays down his life for another, God is present. So I saw some of you nodding when I said, do you find God in the media? Do you find God in films? Or do you find like an opportunity for prayer? So some of you do. Okay. What is some place that we're always going to find God no matter what the movie is? We're always going to find God in that movie because if you think of the different presences of God in our world, what are some of his presences, the way he's present? It's not all equal, it's not all the same. What are some of the ways he's present?
In relation to movies or just
No, in our world.
in nature?
In nature, absolutely. You can encounter God in nature.
In friendship.
Friendship, relationships, absolutely.
In food?
Food, I love it! That's really good. How about the Eucharist? Okay, good. That's kind of what? Yeah. The Bible, the Word of God, as we were saying. But again, the place will always find God in movies, even if it's not a religious movie, and the word God is never used. Well, of course, God is everywhere. He hasn't moved, and he's in technology, and he's in all our modern stuff. Not a problem for him. But in people, like you said, relationships. We'll always find God in people because we are the image of God. And not all those images of God are this cute. Some of them are pretty wounded and damaged, but images of God nonetheless. So we'll always encounter God in film through the people behind the film, the people in the film, the actors, the human sentiments, the human living that's presented in films. Now, does anybody know who started LECTIO DIVINA? Like, where did it come from? The sacred reading, the reflecting on the scriptures, the encountering God through scripture. I'll give you a little hint.
Benedictines.
Yeah, the Benedictines, Saint Benedict, back in the 400s when he lived. And the church has been doing it ever since. They shared that with the whole church. And it was back in 1977 that a Benedictine, very appropriately, said, beyond the written word, the giant visual image of the modern movie screen may provide the impetus for an authentic Lectio. So the Benedictines were going, maybe we can use this sacred film here. And then he said in 1991, 20 years later, the film may have been thoroughly secular, yet for some reason the film was able to do for me what I used to get from reading a spiritual classic. Isn't that interesting? And I think as people are reading less today, kind of know that's happening. I think it's kind of unfortunate that people are busy and there's so many different forms of media that are taking up people's lives that even time to read isn't there. We're becoming much more a visual culture, aren't we? Would you agree with that? We're becoming more and more like screens. Everything's a screen, everything's visual, a video, a short video.